So today I'm here to answer just one question. Can these replace all of these? Hey guys, my name is Caleb, better known as FC Construct over at the Audiophiles, where I write reviews of headphones and in-ears, such as my IEM buyer's guide, where I cover products from $50 all the way up to $5,000. So I don't normally cover wireless earbuds like these ones because they are kind of like two different products in the same package. They are in-ear monitors and tech toys, and historically, those two worlds don't really mesh super well. And so it was kind of a waste of my time. The products just generally weren't very good. But when Samsung finally released the Samsung Galaxy Buds FE for only $100, I thought to myself, okay, maybe it's time I give these a real go. They've had about 5 generations to improve the hardware and the software, work out some of the kinks of the connectivity, of the ANC and Ambient Modes. And, I was thinking to myself, okay, maybe the quality of life improvements here might be enough for me to replace my higher end wired in-ears as daily drivers. So if you're new to this channel, know that we care a lot about sound quality here, and that's what I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about. It's going to get a little technical, but don't worry, because I'm going to do my best to help you understand the sound of the Buds FE in a way that's as straightforward as possible. So here is the compensated frequency response graph of the Buds FE. If you're new and you haven't seen any of this before, don't worry. All you need to know is that a compensated frequency response graph tells us relative to a baseline, which is kind of like the flat line here, how much bass, mids, or treble a headphone or in-ear monitor might have. So what's really important are these gray bands here. They're called preference bounds, and they are a result of audio research on the average listening preference to show that on average, people prefer more bass and less treble. And that kind of makes sense, right? What's really important about them is that it kind of gives us a range of which a product might be tuned towards that would sound enjoyable to the majority of people. So that was obviously a vast oversimplification of the frequency response graph, and if you want to nerd out, there are other videos in this channel to do so at. The point is, when we look at the frequency response of the Buds FE, which is this blue and yellow line here to represent the left and right channels, we can see that the Buds FE is a pretty bassy IEM. It's right up against the upper limits of the preference bounds here, and maybe even a little beyond depending on the exact unit that you get, depending on the channel balance, for example. But it is nicely controlled, and we can see that as we go into the lower mids area, there's a very nice transition in there. Now, at the upper mids, around the 1 to 2 kHz region, we can see that there is a bit of a hump here, and that's actually pretty normal for a lot of IEMs, so no worries there. It's the dip around the 3 kHz region that is a bit more of a Buds FE special. What this dip tells me is that the Buds FE is not a shouty IEM, it's not super intense there, rather it's a bit more recessed, a little bit more relaxed, and I think that's something a lot of people will actually enjoy. Now in the treble, the measurements do start to look a little wonkier, especially for IEMs, and given that my measuring rig is a bit older, it's a clone of a previous standard, so it's not quite state of the art. But there are a few things that we can learn from this. The first is that, around the 4 to 6 kHz region, around that lower treble area, we do see quite a bit of presence, and that's really important because it brings a lot of clarity and some of that transient attacks for the hats and cymbals to the Buds FE, especially to help counterbalance the bassier, more relaxed nature of its tonal profile. Now, in the mid-treble, we really can't tell too much because of the 8 kHz resonance peak here, and especially in the upper treble where it starts to become completely inaccurate. But what I'll say for the upper treble, especially to my ear, is that there isn't a ton of energy up in the upper treble. It sort of rolls off pretty quickly, and that will hurt some of the timbre of the notes of hats and cymbals, those treble-focused instruments. So when we look at the overall tonal profile, just taking a big picture look here, we can see that it is a bassy IEM, but not so bassy I found for it to be overbearing. We can see that the mid-range is relaxed, but not too relaxed that I found it to be lacking in clarity or energy. And the treble, well, it's not the best. There's a bit too much of a roll-off for me, and I'll talk about that later. But as a whole, I did think that Samsung did a pretty good job with this stock tuning that they have here. When I play music on it, I found that it worked the best for a lot of modern genres like pop or what have you, but it didn't, have too many issues with rock or metal songs, which can be a little bit more demanding. But we can go one step deeper. Let's talk about bass quality. The bass of the Buds FE is obviously boomy, but there is quite a nice bass depth to it. Like it really comes from within, so to speak, The problem I have with it is that the transients are a little bit weak, a bit soft. And I'll give you an example. When you think of a kick drum, it sort of has two components to it. There's the beater head, and you want some really nice clean definition as it strikes the skin of the drum. But there's also the depth of the resonance, that the kick drum itself. On the Buds FE, you sort of have a bit of a mushy beater head when it strikes the skin, but there is that really nice deep bass depth to it on the drum itself, which kind of lends to a bit of an odd sort of sounding kick drum at certain times. It doesn't happen for every instrument, but when you do hear it, it kind of takes me out of it just a little bit. In the mid-range, there's not much to say. It's a relaxed sort of mid-range. I have no issues with it. But the treble is once again where I'm starting to have a bit of, I start to notice a few things, right? The lower and mid treble has really nice energy, so it gives some crisp and clean hits to the hats and cymbals. But it's the upper treble that sort of rolls off a bit too quickly for me. And so when you think of a note of a cymbal, it sort of has three phases, I like to think of it as. You have the initial attack, a really nice crisp, clean hit. It sort of have the middle body of the note, and then it sort of rings out at the end. It's that final ring out at the very end that kind of disappears on the Buds FE, and it just doesn't sound the best because of that. So on to the more subjective qualities, the technicalities, if you will. It's a bit of a controversial term, but I'm gonna use it here. The staging, the imaging, the resolution, that sort of thing. When it comes to soundstage, the Buds FE is a little better than I expected actually. It has good stage width, like it kind of almost comes up to my ears, which is basically as much as I can ask for a product like this. It has 0 stage height, which very few IEMs do have, but it has some good depth to it. Like I said, it's only in the bass, but there has that depth to it, and I like that. The imaging won't knock your socks off, but it's much better than just a 3-blob affair. There is actually some good nuance, stereo left and right here. I'm not feeling like I'm super claustrophobic or enclosed or what have you. The resolution is very average. It's a good budget average, I would say. I'm not like wanting for more, especially at $100. As a whole, it's a good job, Samsung. Can't really complain, And so that basically wraps it up for the sound section of the Buds FE using the stop settings. But like many wireless earbuds nowadays, they have their own app. And in this case, we have the Samsung Wearables app where you can adjust all different settings, which I'll talk about later. Importantly, you can adjust the EQ settings. And Samsung, in all of their technological might and glory, somehow forgot to add custom EQ. There's no custom PEQ, there's not even custom GEQ. All you can do is their presets. And the problem is, their presets are horrible. Most of them add even more bass and make the sound just even more mufflier. The stock settings on the Buds FE are, I would say, already towing that line. Most of these other presets, they are just beyond the pale. It's just not good. But apparently, a lot of people like them, so they have them in there. Who am I to say, right? Samsung owns Harman. I'm sure they have their own research. Anyway, there is one really good setting though, and that is called the Clear EQ preset setting. I really like this one. I'll show the graph here. You can see that it really brings the bass down to much more closer within those preference bounds. And it doesn't really adjust the mid-range much actually. It just slightly brings down the upper mid-range a little bit, so it still has that recessed sort of non-shouty feeling, which is very nice. Now I said not to look too closely at the upper treble measurements because it's inaccurate, and that is true. But relatively speaking, we can see that there is a little bit more 10 to 13 kHz in that upper treble region, which is great because it brings back some of those upper harmonics in the hats and cymbals that were missing in the stock settings. And that allows the overall tuning of the Clear EQ setting to be much more in line with a more balanced profile that you and I might be used to if you're a long-time listener on this channel. So let's talk about the wireless performance of the Buds FE, because it doesn't matter how good these sound if the connectivity is not reliable. And this is where I've been burned before in the past, where I've tried other wireless products and I've had issues of latencies or disconnectivities, weird stuttering, or artifacting. And those are things I really watch out for whenever I listen to a new wireless product to try and see if those issues have been mitigated. I'm happy to report with the Buds FE, most of these issues have been resolved. I know it's still early days, but I've only ever experienced maybe one weird software glitch. The rest of the time it's been rock solid. The connectivity has been consistently stable. There's very little latency, it's almost imperceptible for me. I don't hear any stuttering, I don't hear any sort of weird artifacting or noises, which is great. The Bluetooth range and connectivity is pretty fair. It basically covers the entire floor of the house that I'm in. I think the reason it's so good is because it uses Samsung's proprietary SSC codec, which is kind of like their version of Sony LDAC, and it sounds fantastic. The problem is that it only works on Samsung devices. So if you don't have one, or if you're trying to hook it up to your desktop computer like I am, it defaults either to SBC or AAC. And it's there you can start noticing some of that latency, and the treble becomes a little rougher. The other thing I should point out is that the Buds FE doesn't support Bluetooth multipoint, which is something I expect a big tech company like Samsung to be able to incorporate into their wireless products. So even if you did want to use it with a PC, I would have to go through the whole Bluetooth pairing song and dance, which is pretty annoying if I'm rolling into work and I want to get set up with my laptop. So I end up using whatever pair of wired IEMs I have lying around in the office, and the Buds FE gets relegated to only being used with my phone. So here's a quick microphone test of the Samsung Galaxy Buds FE. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. I honestly expected Samsung to do a lot better than this, given that, 3 years ago when we all had to start using Zoom meetings, everybody was just using whatever microphone they could, including older generation versions of Buds like these ones. Alright, so let's talk about ANC and the ambient modes. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't tried ANC and IEMs before, and I used to think it's a bit of a gimmick because, well, it really goes inside your ear, there's passive isolation, and these things are pretty tiny. Like, how good can the ANC actually be? Turns out, it's pretty good. So I don't have any hard numbers for you, but the way the ANC works on the Buds FE is that it tends to reduce a lot of the low-end energy, but for the higher-end frequencies that, are a little more unpredictable, it does sort of filter through. And the best way to describe it is that if you're walking by the side of the road and a car kind of comes by you, you will sort of hear the whooshing of the car, but you won't hear as much of that rumble, which can be pretty good if you're sort of at a busy intersection. And I definitely don't think it's a gimmick anymore. I actually tend to keep it on most of the time. So I thought the ambient mode was going to be even more of a gimmick than the ANC. When I was trying it around at home, I didn't have any music playing. It just piped in some environmental noise, and I thought to myself, who's ever going to use this? Like, what's the point? But I decided to give it a fair go at the office and kind of just try it out. And with a bit of soft music playing on top of it, it turned out really, really good. It wasn't distracting at all. The best way to describe its effect is just that I could hear myself typing on a keyboard versus not hearing anything at all because of the passive isolation. And I could hear my coworker a couple cubicles down having a conversation. And that sort of situational awareness was great in a work environment like mine, where I just want to get a bit of work done, play a bit of music, but someone could come up to me at any time and, strike up a conversation, and I can just take out my earbuds and give them my full attention. So I do find myself using the ambient mode quite a bit more than I ever thought I would. So how does all of this affect battery life? Samsung boasts that the Buds FE has about 6 to 8.5 hours of battery life, depending on if you use the ANC or not. And from my usage, that sounds about accurate. I lose about 10 to 15% of battery per hour, depending on how often I turn on the ANC. But that's only half the story, because on my phone, when I'm connected to the Buds FE, it loses about 8 to 10% of battery per hour, even with the screen off, and it starts to get a little bit warm. And I don't know about you, but that is a bit of a battery drain to me. So for my usage, that's not really a problem because I only use these on my way to work or if I need an hour or two just to crunch some documents in the office. But if you plan to use them all day, every day, you might need to start charging your phone twice a day. And I don't know about you, but I'm not particularly a fan of that, but you can let me know in the comments below if that's something that you already do. Finally, let's talk about fit. The tips that the Buds FE come with have these mesh in the front, which is nice. However, the silicone they use is not the same as your standard IEM tip, so they are a bit more slippery and don't form as quite as good of a seal for me. The sizing is also a bit odd. I have to use the largest tips here when I normally use a medium, which can be a bit of a problem if you already use a large. You can also see that the nozzle length here is super short, which means that it's hard to get a deep fit of these. The Buds FE also comes with these winged rubber rings to help it hold in your ear better, but I didn't find that they helped at all. So overall, the fit on these are a little awkward. They aren't uncomfortable though. It's more that the shallowness and the fact that I don't get a very good seal that makes them feel like they're sort of falling out of my ears all the time. But the truth is, they're actually very stable. I've gone running in these and I can even shake my head really, really hard and it won't fall off. So at the end of the day, I do recommend the Buds FE. The sound quality is pretty good. The wireless performance is excellent if you have a Samsung device, and the ANC and ambient modes are genuinely useful. For $100 that it runs for, this is pretty good value. But now let me answer that admittedly clickbait question I asked at the very start. Can the Buds FE really replace all of these? And the answer is, sort of. As a daily driver, if I'm just on my way to work, I'm taking the bus, maybe taking a walk, doing some chores around the house, listening to a podcast, sound quality is not the most important thing, and the quality of life features that wireless earbuds have do really start to matter. But if I really want to enjoy music, like if a new album came out or if I'm in the mood for a specific playlist, yeah, I'm gonna pull out one of these. And that's because they provide a different listening experience or have different sound qualities that I won't necessarily get in these. And that's not to degrade the Buds FE for only being $100 and therefore it's bad. No, the point is that this is kind of just how the hobby goes. That's why a lot of us collect multiple headphones or have multiple in-ears. Alright, so if you made it this far, you've just watched me drone on for 14 minutes about a pair of wireless earbuds. So thanks, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Just kidding. If you want even more information, do check out my full written review over at the Audiophiles, where I go even more in depth about the features that the Buds FE has and doesn't have. I do start to get a little bit complainy, so I didn't put them in this video because it's long enough. But it's there if you want it. Now, you might be wondering where the comparisons to other wireless earbuds are, and frankly, I don't have them because, like I said, this is my first time trying to review one of these items. But I will link in the description below a Korean YouTuber who has a great database of all of these true wireless earbuds and other consumer-focused audio-related tech items. So that's gonna be it from me. Thanks for watching. I hope that was useful. Let us know in the comments below if you'd like to see me do more of this sort of content. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. I'll see everybody next time. Bye-bye.